Langton Green is really a remarkable facility between Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, Maryland, USA, that responds to the needs of the intellectually disabled. And I can't remember, John and Diana, what you told me, but I think it's between 200 and 400 members of that community are you've helped find housing for them, and you provide a lot of services to support those individuals. And as part of that support, have an amazing garden there at Langton Green facility that I was lucky enough to visit, where they grow all kinds of wonderful produce and provide the community with some of that produce, and then also use the proceeds of the sales of that produce to the public for supporting the Langton Green cause. And I thought, well, given the interest that Langton Green, as John just said, the interest that Langton Green has had over the years in the creative arts, I wondered if they might be interested in some poetry. And they said, yes, they would. So today is that first kind of groundbreaking event where we're bringing poetry to a visit of Langton Green online. And we're really grateful to all of you for joining us in this session. So in the next few minutes, let me just give you, I'm Hiram Larew. Let me just give you a brief overview of kind of what to expect in the next 90 minutes, 60 to 90 minutes. We're going to have a fine lineup of poets from near and far share their work, their poems, as a way of recognizing the important work that groups like Langton Green do. Their poems won't focus on a particular theme. They're not going to focus on any particular subject or theme other than excellence. The poems you're about to hear, I think you will all agree, are going to be just top-notch poems. And through that sharing of wonderful poems, these poets are going to prove the point once again that poets are engaged and that they can and are lending. They can lend and are lending their powerful talents to positive initiatives like Langton Green. Let me be real clear. This is not a fundraiser. This is simply to raise awareness, use poetry to help raise awareness of this important community facility and social cause represented by Langton Green. And Diana and John will be posting the website for Langton Green and their Facebook page, I believe, throughout the reading. So you'll have a chance if you want to visit that. So we really appreciate the poets offering their voices and donating their time to this important cause. So each poet will read a poem or two. Each poet will read a poem or two and then briefly comment on what they kind of consider the role of poetry is and can be in supporting good social causes like Langton Green. And I think you'll hear from various aspects and viewpoints how poetry can support important social causes. We'll go for about 90 minutes, give or take a few. We are recording the session, so anyone later on can replay it or replay sections of it. And we're also asking anyone who would like to put any kind of comments, ooh and ahs, I really love that, or that really spoke to me, comments in the chat. So don't be hesitant at all to chat in the chat box. We also ask that everyone mute themselves when you're not on mic, if you're not on mic. And lastly, we're not sure yet, but if there's time towards the end and people are so inclined, we might have a little bit of time to open it up for Q&A. And if that's the case, be ready with a couple of questions for the poets. So with all of that, let's dive in and start with some wonderful poems. And we've got a wonderful poet to open up the session for us. Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram is not only a digital artist living in Washington, D.C., USA, but he's also a retired university professor, a social change activist, a founder and executive director of an award-nominated nonprofit organization in Washington. He's also the host of a blog talk show, which many of us know and really admire, called Quintessential Listening Poetry Online Radio. And he is a life coach, motivational speaker, educational consultant, and noted spoken word poet. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Michael. Michael, be sure to speak up as you can.
Will
And
do.
we're really looking forward to hearing your work.
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share some of my poetry. Langton Green Community Farm is a prime example of a nonprofit organization that believes that adults with intellectual disabilities, other disabilities, can choose to live independent, full lives because our lives are not prescribed like the rules of grammar, which are rigid. There's no syntax, no structured syntax. We live our lives that are fluid, dynamic, and full of unexpected twists and turns, and there's freedom of choices to take risk and create our own paths. So what I'd like to do is to share a piece about the rules of grammar and how it differs from who we are as unique individuals empowered to be ourselves. And the title of the piece is Grammatically Incorrect. I am not a noun, a person or thing that you can possess by adding the letter S. You can't pluralize my being, my essence, or my soul to function solely as an object of your mind's construction. I am not a verb. You can't conjugate me at will and think that it's okay. My action is a reaction to your stagnant state of being. I would not change my tense, my mood, or my voice. Any aspect of me to assimilate to your assumptions of perfection. I am not an adjective. You can't modify or subjugate my life. I am not dependent on you for my existence because I can stand alone and live the unique individual, empowered and proud to be who I am. I am not a conjunction or a preposition. You can't either and or block me out of existence, nor can you relegate me to a phrase and place me before the world and expect me to express an idea that is not my own. What I am is grammatically incorrect. My language is the language of difference. I do not conform to standard ways, prescribed ways of thinking, knowing, believing, loving, or behaving. Therefore, take me as I am. I'm creatively, uniquely whole, totally me, grammatically incorrect, but free.
Mm, mm.
The next piece I'd like to share, because this is a farm, a community farm, is a poem titled Shelling Bees. And it was written 30 years ago, but I think the message is still universal. So I'd like you to walk with me on this journey in terms of shelling beans. I'm not sure whether any of you shell beans, whatever, growing up with your parents. And there many times you did not want to do it, but you did it anyway to honor your parent. So again, I wrote this for my mom, again, but the message is universal, shelling beans. In a small southern town, not too far from the one that you no longer claim, I recently visited my mama. I needed to get away from the maddening crowd. The books were talking aloud. I am no longer what I once was. I left that back there just because. I needed to see her face. Behold, the originator of a race. I needed to let my mama know that her son was truly on the go. It's in the grand scheme of life. But I was clearly without strife, had overcome their small town mentality, embraced the city formality. I was a giant among men, degreed and all too big to fall. I wanted to let my mom know that I had become all that and more. In the kitchen, there she sat, big, beautiful, black and fat, smiling from ear to ear. Her baby was home. Too long had he been gone. God's done come. Oh, cousin Effie snickered. Maybe some of her boys were in jail, so jealousy oft flickered. Mama, in a loud voice I proclaimed, for you, the world I've tamed, bigger than big, older than gold, when I walk, always paid with silver and gold. So ask me, Mama, about the places I've seen, the people I've seen. You need some money? Here's yours. My pockets are filled with green. Come, son, she said, in a voice both nice and sweet. Come sit here at the table and help your mama while she's still able. Child, for the day I've seen, grab that sack and help shell these beans. Mama, I said, with an incredulous voice, came back here by choice. I've been out walking with kings and queens. I don't remember anything about shelling beans. You see, shelling beans. It's for the common man. I gave that up when I left the land. So, Mama, ask me about my plate of riches. Do you need a new dress? I'll give you one and made with gold stitches. She looked at me in her wise old way. Although I did not know exactly what she would say, I knew it would contain the wisdom of the ages. And she had lived a good life. And her life book was full of pages. She said, son, don't you ever forget, no matter how big you get, and life's about more than being able to walk with kings and queens. Life's about remembering how to do the common things like shelling beans. You see, shelling beans is a time on a task. And if you don't remember how, then I should have never asked. For it means that you've forgotten that true wealth comes from the fruit of the earth. From any place else. What is his real worth? So, my son, tell me your story. Is it only of the riches and the glory, or is it also about remembering how to do the common and simple things like shelling beans in addition to all that you've seen? Mm. Mom, I said, in a sheepish voice that trembled, but not by choice, I do remember. So I bring up that sack and help shell those beans. And we share going on like hours, it seemed. But on that day, I did not mind shelling beans because I shelled them at the point. Hmm. So when I think about shelling beans, that's what happens here. That's what happens here. You're working with others. You're building something with others. And that is so important to never forget how to shell beans with your fellow man, your fellow woman, whoever, to shell beans with them as you go through this life's journey. Now, in terms of poetry, raising awareness and outreach, I feel that it can occur in the following 6 ways really quickly. It can help you create emotional connections because poetry evokes strong emotions. So it makes it relatable to a wider audience. Poetry allows you to help spread messages in a condensed fashion, messages that are expressive and can communicate complex issues. Through poetry, there's an opportunity to shift perspectives. Poetry challenges beliefs, offers alternative viewpoints, and promotes understanding and empathy. Poetry is also inspiring. That's another way that you can connect and raise awareness because it is inspiring. It can motivate people to change, to talk to other people about different issues, different concerns. One of the big ones that I view as being important in terms of raising awareness, poetry allows you the opportunity to amplify marginalized voices. It gives a platform to underrepresented communities, and it promotes inclusivity as well as social justice. And finally, poetry. I don't care whether it's by someone who's been in the business 50 years or it's their first day, it helps promote dialogue. It sparks discussions. It helps in terms of bringing people together again, and it fosters understanding as well as collective action. So to me, poetry is a powerful medium to raise awareness for all of us and meaningful change. Thank you.
So we don't need to have any more readings. I think Michael has said it all. Thank you, Michael. I feel like I've been to the Church of Poetry or the Synagogue of Poetry or the Mosque of Poetry. You've just done a wonderful job of opening with those two powerful poems. I love the lines in the first one. I am not an adverb. I am not an adjective. That was wonderful. And gosh, shelling beans. What can I say? You've gotten a lot of wonderful chat in the chat box. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here, for your spirit, and for that poetry that helped open things up. So we'll turn it over to Diana and John to introduce our next poet from Ireland.
Okay, give us just 1 second here.
That was incredible.
That was
absolutely blown away. And next up, we have Rena Fleming, who grew up on a farm in County Limerick, Ireland, and now enjoys the landscape and shores of Galway Bay.
And Rena tends to have a fairly soft, beautiful voice. So you may want to, again, turn up your microphone just a little bit to get every single word of Rena Fleming's poem.
Thank you. The first poem is from the place I come from, down in County Limerick in the south of Ireland. The Hill of Art Patrick, where the larks sing, stones tumble from the tower in the slow motion of centuries. Graves increase, monastery field traces fade. Below in the flat land, each knows his fourth cousin. These people with mud on their feet knock cold, bright sparks of wit from each other to tease the larks to sing above our dead. The graveyard there is conveniently placed on top of the hill. I'm from the same place generally. There was a hot day among dry days, haymaking in the top meadow, men working with hay forks. There was the sound of a tractor, the burr of the mowing machine driven by the farmer in the next field to be saved. There were the farmer's children, gathering mist sops, adding them to haycocks. There was a collision between one shining prong of the two-pronged fork and the lower lip of the 6-year-old child. There was a flow of blood, a chase from the meadow to the kitchen. There was a mother washing ware, a handing back without turning of a sink-smelling cloth. Next day there was a return to the meadow until the day when there was rain. Shall I go on to the topic at this point, Hiram?
If you have another poem, Rena, that's fine. If not, absolutely. Any comments or thoughts you have on the topic would be great.
Okay, well, if it fits in, this poem is from right here, the bog, which is just beside me. The bog on Boher Trasna. Before it turns to winter spices, the bog, late August close embracing, uses all of art's devices. It makes a gilded green from mixes, asphodel, grass, and a low sun slanting, before it turns to winter spices. Bright spiky leaves and tufts of thistles ring granite islands with heather robing, using all of art's devices. Disdaining coming umber shades, gorse green flowers on gorse green glowing, before they turn to winter spices. Late afternoon, the bird song quiets, the cow's with path, the span dividing, uses all of art's devices. Edging wetland, the red of rowan sings with trumpets and loose stripes purpling, before it turns to winter spices, uses all of art's devices.
Rena, wonderful.
Right, excuse me. I've got a slight cold. I've gone slightly off topic, which was poetry as a community service tool, to how poetry has served the Irish people. I thought back to primary school, where the first poets we learned about were the bards. They preserved history in oral form and gave expression to the subversive ideas and feelings of the Irish under English oppression, under the guise of disguising names for Ireland, such as My Dark Rosalie. In my lifetime, the poems of Michael Longley, Paula Meehan, and Evan Boland are instances of poetry which moved the society forward. Mm. Michael Longley wrote Ceasefire during the Northern Irish Troubles, when there were rumours of an IRA ceasefire, because he said, "I do have some sense of the magic of poetry in the world, hoping it would make some contribution to a drift towards a ceasefire." The poem is set in the camp of Achilles, where Priam sues for the body of his son Hector. The two best known lines are the last. "I got down on my knees and I get down, excuse me, I get down on my knees and do what must be done and kiss Achilles' hand, the killer of my son." Mm. The poem was published in 1994 and the Good Friday Agreement was signed in 1998. As you can tell from my voice, I am suffering with my nerves. Mm. Paula Meehan addresses our mixed feelings about the Catholic Church in her poem, Hannah Grandmother, published in 2007. Her grandmother lived in the tenement and red light district of Dublin, around Montgomery Street, in the early 20th century. And these are extracted lines. In Hannah's voice, she says, "Tell them priests nothing. Keep your sins to yourself. Don't be giving them a thrill." On her knees before the Madonna, Our Lady of Facts of Life, she closes her eyes and lowers her brow to her joined hands, prays hard, woman to woman. Mm. And if I'm not taking up too much time, just Evan Boland, who was born in 1994, a poet and academic in Ireland and the USA. She was a pioneer, almost a contradiction in terms as a woman poet at that time. She brought subjects considered unworthy of the higher art of poetry, women, children, and domesticity into her work. In Night Feed, 1982, for example, just a verse from the poem. "This is the best I can be, housewife to this nursery, where you hold on, dear life." Mm. And writing on the famine in quarantine, she describes the tragedy in terms of a narrative of the last journey and death of a couple. And it's a magnificent poem, and it's available online. Mm. And it's far too strongly emotional to read much from it here. Mm. So that's it. I have a short poem about the famine here. Sorry.
If you have one fairly short one, Rena, that would be wonderful.
Yes, this is a short one. It's about how many of the poorest in Ireland during the Great Famine died. With sod, scraw and thatch, they made the shelter which enveloped them. The cabin rose from the ground around it. When nothing was left but a flicker of life, the family drew together inside, closing the door for decency. Rain, wind, and time melted the walls. The roof lowered, the door rotted, the cabin sank to a hummock, to a wide ridge, disappeared from sight, as had the dead from hunger within, of whom all knowledge had gone.
That was Rena Fleming from Ireland. Rena, you've demonstrated through your own work, beautifully lyrical work, and then the poets you showcased, the wonderful Irish poets you've showcased, the power of poetry to speak to the soul, to speak up about political strife, and even religious tolerance. So we're really grateful to you for bringing all of those terrific poets, their voices, and the power of all of those folks into the circle today. Thank you so much for being here. And you may think you sounded nervous. You didn't sound nervous at all. You sounded lovely. And you'll want to check the chat because there are a lot of wonderful comments about your reading there and the poems you presented. So moving on to our next terrific poet, Andre Taylor, aka Bernardo, is a native Washingtonian poet and songwriter and singer. He has been writing for several years and for 5 decades, in fact, on all matters of life. His written words have been featured in countless newspapers, magazines, and poetry anthologies. And he's a veteran of stage, radio, and television who believes in being of service to the word which graces him to help others. Probably the most important thing you need to know about Bernardo is he's just retired. So if he comes across as being very relaxed, you'll understand why. So Bernardo, your time at the mic.
Thank you, Hiram. It's very wonderful to be here for such a wonderful cause. I have been asked to discuss how poetry lifts every voice, and I think it does that by being present all over the world, in every society, in every generation. Poetry speaks out to tell someone's story. And I have chosen poetry to do that for me. I try to write poems that don't need me to explain them. They only need to be heard, taken to heart and mind. So please, hear my voice. Voice, a choice we make. What sound to break the quiet? In a multicultural household, which language to reply with? To communicate, appreciate, explore this mystery of history of culture, to choose the views of eagles, doves, or vultures. How do I find Sankofa, the mystical winged creature who will carry me over the Atlantic Ocean on a magical, majestic journey? Maybe turn back the hands of time so I will arrive to see, hear, feel, taste, and smell the essence of the place my ancestors did once dwell. How do I cross this great divide beyond the fear, the doubt, the anguish? A look, an ear, a heart to part the language. A boat, a plane, a bird, a word to link my soul to heritage. Voice as bridge. Bonjour, Akim Dieta, et bon te ver, Abaragani. How is your family? Grazie per l'aiuto. Ek het you lief? Olarum bukun funo. Assalamu alaikum. Take none of this for granted. They speak 2,000 different languages on the continent of Africa, where my DNA says I am from. But so much information has been lost along the way. How do I find my way home? Or at least the home of my great-great-great-great-great-great-grands. But do their lives even matter? After all, I understand home is where I am, where I stand, kneel, pray. How do I use voice as bridge to commune, to communicate, to bias, privilege, and hate? What words can I say when videos and body cams make their viewpoints sham? What is it I can say? And if I can't make it okay, how do I find Sankofa, that mystical winged creature to carry me over to where I am safe, to drive while black and have no fear nor apprehension of what moves I make? Or even in these states of grief to still find peace, asking God to lead the way to where I may learn how I can forgive, prayer sent to where he lives, using my voice as bridge. We live in a world where not everyone is fully seen or able to or capable of expressing themselves. Poetry, therefore, can lift those people and bring those in the backdrop forward to be seen, heard, and hopefully understood. It's how they may be defined. Define too fine for me. I don't see the way you see. Define what's fine for me. I am trying so hard to be. I am lost. I cannot get across the fray to say the things I want to say. What is that is in the way? This wall of haze, this graze of gray that splays from the amazing fractal jewel that holds my eye. Why is that to take it in is backwards, so you say? The way to see, so you say. You can do it, you say to me, so you say. Come on, move it, be like us, so you say. But cannot tell me how. I cannot get across. Lost the words heard in my head. I want to say. Instead, I play the keys, C, E, G, C, E, G, always, always there for me. C, E, G, C, E, G, my key to find my way back to a place and time where there is order. Mine. What do you use to find your way to find?
Mm-hmm.
Finally, we live in a world with so much turbulence and grim tidings that poetry is needed to lift the voice of hope. Hope. Help offered precedes elevation. That's something I think of when I think of hope. I think of a rope tossed down inside a well where the faintest cry of help is heard and someone above yells back, "Hello, are you okay? Assistance is on the way. Wrap this line around you if you can. Hold on while some other helping hands arrive. We will survive together. We'll be better. Just hold on." Healing offsets pain endured is also what I think of when I think of hope. Those who've been hurt, treated, cured, from major ailments, free at last, focus on this too shall pass. When I had surgery on my heart, intense pain was a part of my life for 2 months after, such that I was scared of laughter. Bursting out too hard, too much, I clutched my chest, intense the pain, but now I'm free to laugh again. Here our pathways encountered what amounts to final thoughts of mine, inclined to what you brought for us to see. Reflections I might give for as long as I have lived and as much as you have seen or even dreamed to come to be. Hope helps us find the courage to become the ones we are, then continues on becoming, each following our own true northern star. We broke our hope like bargaining, past hope like broken bread. In lives where love is starving, perhaps they may be nurtured, rescued, fed from seeds of hope.
Mm-hmm. Bernardo. That was Bernardo. If there's ever a poet who uses those terrific tools of rhyme and rhythm to make a powerhouse presentation, it's Bernardo. In this case, bringing us hope as well as voice to those who might not otherwise have a voice. So thank you, Bernardo, for being here and for offering those terrific, terrific poems. We're now going to turn back to Diana and John to say just a little bit about Langton Green, and then I think they're going to introduce our next poet.
Hello, everyone. I'm leaning in so that everyone can hear me. I'm still okay, Mr. Hiram, as far as audio, right?
Well, we can hear you. You really need to project if you can. Yeah.
I sure will. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time and space to describe what interest that Langton Green has in art. And for us, it's very simple. I jotted down some notes, but I realized I really didn't need it. About 10 years ago, when we acquired the farm, we bought 13 acres of art. And that was art that Mother Nature provided. Every day here, I'm privileged to come to work. Every day is new. For people that work in brick and mortar buildings, I realize that they don't have that same affordability to come into a new environment every day. Every day I come to work, there is something new. A new tree, a new bird, a new angle or way I've looked at something, a new animal that I didn't see before, a new wildflower that maybe grew overnight, a new bloom, on a flower. Every season is beautiful. In summer and spring, we have the opportunity to see everything bloom. In the winter, our roses still bloom here at the Langton Green Community Farm. And then in the fall, we have the opportunity to see everything change. Although we have added murals and animals and gardens of all sorts, sensory gardens, rose gardens, vegetable gardens, none of that is in comparison to the fact of what Mother Nature herself affords us every day. And before I close, I just want to talk about a sit spots analogy that I had in my mind. So we partner with Nature's Sacred, and I will put their link in the chat. But Nature's Sacred creates community areas for people to sit and reflect and to spend time in nature. And if you ever have had the opportunity to have a sit spot, which is literally just somewhere you sit and you reflect, you may meditate. I've learned here at Langton Green, I can sit in the same spot and each day see something new. Mm-hmm. Or even if you're sitting in that spot and you change your angle just by a few degrees, you're able to see something new and beautiful too. So that is what the art here means to us at Langton Green.
Thank you for sharing that poem, Diana. That's a wonderful poem right there, what you said. That's terrific. And would one of you like to introduce Colette?
Yep, that's me. So I have the pleasure now to introduce my good friend, Colette. She was born in Baltimore, Maryland, as the 10th child out of 11 children, the daughter of 2 teachers. She taught special education in Anne Arundel County Public Schools in Maryland for 41 years. Shortly after retiring in 2021, she began volunteering at the Langton Green Community Farm 2 days a week, which I believe was a typo on her end because she's here every day. At the farm, Colette assists with animal care, planting, harvesting, field, garden, and greenhouse maintenance, and anything else that needs to be done. I'm also going to insert that she is our resident baker. Recently, she has taken writing classes with Susan Moger in hopes of recording her experiences before she forgets them, and as a way to share her memories, observations, and ideas with others. Welcome, Colette.
Hi, everyone. I'm very honored to be in this group of distinguished poets, but I hope to, in my poetry, give you more of an idea of the farm through my observations. And I think Diana's introduction and summary was exactly right on, that poetry is a way that it has taught me and others to step back, observe, appreciate, take note of everything around you, the people around you. And to a lot of the individuals at the farm, they may not even realize it, but they make many observations. And I hope that some of my poetry has validated that for them by making it known that I recognize them, what they do, and everything about what's happening at the farm. So the poem I'm reading is Haiku on the Farm, but it is a series of 14 haikus, and it was written in the springtime, and as Diana says, just taken from my observations and appreciation of everything on the farm. Haiku on the farm. Morning mist hovers. Flecked hens emerge on tiptoe. Groundhogs scurry home. Approaching white truck. The goats clamor at the gate, begging for their treats. Workers gather eggs. Chickens fuss to be disturbed, ruffling in protest. Pigs in the barnyard, their tails wagging while they eat. Such is porcine bliss. Hawks waft overhead. Cawing crows scavenge the fields. Bluebirds sweet warble. Compost pungent smell smoldering heap of debris turns to rich, dark soil. A slender figure, pulling more than twice her weight, turning warm, brown earth. More fields to prepare, seeds waiting to be planted, farm works never done. Plants laden with fruit, strawberries ready to pick, crimson jewels gleam. Vibrant rows of green with dots of rich burgundy, lettuce bouquets bloom. Tomatoes climb high, trellises of long white string for tendrils to grasp. Pink heads pop from dirt, sprouting leafy headdresses, spicy spring radish. Farm hands scour beds, select perfect specimens. Harvest day has come. Bins burst with produce. Animals rest peacefully. Savor Earth's bounty.
Thank you, Colette.
I hope that my hope is that gave you a little more picture of what the farm is like, especially in the springtime.
I love that you chose the haiku form to present. It gets to the essence, doesn't it? I mean, you have to very carefully select, as you have, the images that you want to use to convey the emotions, and you've done that beautifully in that. I think you said 14 haiku set.
Yes.
That
Yes.
really is a whole. If we ever are so fortunate as to have a poetry reading there at the farm, and I'm just putting it out there, if we ever are so fortunate as to do that, I certainly hope you'll be able to share that and many other poems, because it's a wonderful garden and you've captured it really, really well.
I hope I
Thank
had.
you.
I think and I do, like I said, I hope that the poetry is a way of recognizing all the observations that things I've observed and reflected on, and the importance. And I think that sharing it with everyone at the farm, and our hopes is to share it with the individuals and make them, think about it, visualize it, perhaps do some artwork based on it, realize that in everyday life, appreciate what's around you. The smell of the warm earth, each plant as it is growing, and each animal as it is going in it's about its daily routine. And I know a lot of the individuals there do notice those things, and they make comments, and I don't think they realize the importance of that's something that's worth recording. And so I'm trying to help do that for them.
You will, and you're just the right person to help because you do it beautifully yourself. So I remember pulling in the first time I visited the farm and seeing this. I think they're pygmy goats, and they're they're pretty captivating. They're really great.
They do come right out to let you know.
They do. Well, so that was Colette Price. Thank you so much for being here, Colette, and for sharing that kind of on the spot poetry haiku that you shared. Really appreciate that. Our next poet, her bio could take volumes, but we'll try to keep it short to give her time at the mic. Grace Cavalieri lives in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, USA, and she is Maryland's 10th Poet Laureate. She founded and still produces, after 43, now probably 44, 45, 46 years, a program from the Library of Congress called The Poet and the Poem, in which she interviews poets from around the world. It's an amazing poetry resource that Grace, over these many decades, has championed and produced herself. Her first forthcoming book, well, I think this is a little bit older bio because I think you've got a newer book, but in 2020, she published a book titled What the Psychic Said. And I think she's just recently published another book. But let's turn the mic over to the Grace Cavalieri. Thanks, Grace, for being here.
From the Hiram. What a pleasure to be with all of my new friends I've just met today. Well, what poetry means to me, simply is that if we didn't have poetry, then words would become very dirty and dusty and needing repair. Because I always say poetry rinses off language. And I also believe what Michael said, how poetry keeps us from being lonely, because without common spirits, we would be really in isolation with what we feel. And very importantly, since the beginning of time, we preserve the beloved. If we didn't have poetry, we would not have a way to preserve the loved ones who have gone and to honor the ones who are still here. And actually, if we didn't have poetry, we would be like three-dimensional creatures walking through the mud of civilization and sounding like some terrible debate on television between the powerful and the greedy. And if we didn't have poetry, the sun and the moon might go unnoticed. So I'm going to read two poems. And the first is called, Here is a Poem You Can Hide In. When you come to wherever failed hopes go, turn here instead, where my child's voice is heard in the night, still damp from dreams. Talk of sweet surrender against the February snow, and then turn inward where silver trims the bitter limbs. I'm not afraid to mention previous aspirations and all we know went wrong. I'm here with you, under the same sun and same moon, above darkness, right here, the source of prayer, right here in my hand. And that's the way I feel when we're together. Poetry is right here in my hand. And this is about gun violence, and it's called Let's Not Shoot the Poets. Let's not shoot the poets. They fish at night and dig by day. They were not born for death. Their heavens are low enough to touch, flashing illumination and desire. They make spring beautiful. They listen in their heads for autumn's breaking. They create and work, turning dead wood to life. Society's not enough, so they fly above its deception and crash into clouds of meaning. The bucolic would not exist but for their masterpiece. Hostile fire, stay away from the crush of boats crowding the shore filled with possible poets. They are like animals, birthing but never forgetting their loss. Poems may be crushed, but memory is the hot gold made every day. They stay. Thank you so very much, Hiram.
Grace.
Thank you.
You just continue to blaze new trails for us, and we appreciate it. Those two poems, terrific. I'm going to be looking forward to re-listening to those in the recording. So thank you for being here, your spirit, your grin, and that amazing voice of poetry that you bring to everything you do.
Loved everything I've heard. I've loved everything I've heard today. I'm alive, more alive than I was at 1 o'clock.
Well, there you go. There we go. Really appreciate it. I think you also helped bring the sun and the moon into the circle too here today. So that's great. Let's turn back to John and Diana to introduce our next poet who bridges the Ireland-U.S. connection.
Yes, sir. Ryan Dennis from Ireland is the author of the novel The Beasts They Turned Away, published by Epic Press in March 2021. He is a Fulbright alumnus and PhD in creative writing and has taught writing at the National University of Ireland, Galway, and Maynooth University. His work has appeared in various literary journals such as the New England Review, Fourth Genre, and the Threepenny Review. Ryan is also a syndicated columnist for agricultural print journals in 4 countries and 2 languages. He founded the Milk House in 2020 to showcase rural writing.
Oh, thanks. When Hiram sent out the invitation to read a poem, he left out the detail that I would have to follow up a uh, a poet laureate. So, um, but no, glad to be here, and a lot of great poetry, and very glad to meet most of you for the first time. So I just have one poem to read. It's called "The Old Holler." It was published 10 years ago, uh, but I think it's become more relevant in the last years. I write a lot about farming, and I think something somewhat unique to the act of farming is that, in the act of doing the same thing every day, it creates a rhythm, and I think that rhythm gets eternalized. And when someone has to stop farming, I think sometimes that rhythm still persists, and that person has to figure out what to do with that then. So this poem called "The Old Holler" is actually about my uncle, who had a farm and then had to stop farming. But that is also experience that my father eventually went through, my grandfather, and all our neighbors as well, really. So the old holler. He limps into the barn with intentions among suggestions. He leans on his cane in the same angle the earth tilts, and it's a lesson in resignation. He lets us know if someone has sold out and the price of milk next month. We send our bull calves in on Thursdays because the old holler tells us to. He rubs the neck of the cattle that look out of his trailer. He once farmed, but the farm is gone. He still gets up at 4 because something tells him to. His shirt sleeves folded neatly over the scars beneath them. He closes the latch behind the wide-eyed calf. Once it's in your blood, he says, you can't get it out. The old holler asks what we're putting in the tank, and if we got our corn in with the weather. Every time he leaves, I understand our communion better. How come he rests on the gate so heavily, and why he speaks to the bulls he takes to slaughter.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I appreciate about Langton Green, and having discovered it through this event, is the recognition that sometimes, as Wendell Berry once said, that there's more to agriculture than just agriculture. At least I think when it's done right, that it can provide a sort of social capital, and well as contribute to the communities around it. And I just want to say it's exciting to see what Langton Green is doing, that they're taking up this kind of multifunctional aspect of farming and using it to help the local community. So it was very exciting to find out.
Thank you, Ryan. The Old Holler, a terrific piece. I was with you every line of the way. Just really evocative of times past, but also times looking forward. If anyone hasn't checked out the Milk House, and Ryan, maybe you could put the link in the web or in the chat if you haven't. You'll want to, because it's a powerhouse, a spot for showcasing work that might otherwise go unnoticed, namely writing about the incredibly important rural setting and rural lifestyle. And Ryan is working worldwide. I think he's got one foot in Ireland, and if I recall correctly, you also have one foot in the US. But well beyond those two countries, he brings in writers from all over. And so he's doing some amazing work through that initiative. And it would be so cool to continue to be linked with you, Ryan, in anything having to do with the garden at Langton Green. Really appreciate you being here today, all the way from Ireland, you and Rena. I know it's a little bit late your time, but we're really, really grateful to you both. And Tony Trainer, who's here as a pair of ears, wonderful poet himself, also from Ireland. Really appreciate all of you being here to help internationalize this discussion and this reading. So our next poet, Linda Trott Dickman, is a good friend. I've never met her in person, but I have met her and really admire her work, really love her work here on Zoom. She's been writing poetry since her first sleepaway camp experience when she was 10 years old. Linda is the author of Robes, The Air That I Breathe, and Road Trip. Linda's poetry has been published online, in Prank Journal, and in several anthologies. She's the current coordinator of a wonderful reading group at Northport Arts Coalition. That's in Northport, New York, USA. And she's taught poetry to children for over 35 years and leads a poetry workshop for adults at what's called Samantha's Little Bit of Heaven Coffee House in East Northport, New York. She's just a wonderful soul and a terrific poet. So, Linda, your time at the mic.
Thank you so much, Hiram. I am humbled by all of you, and I'm glad to see some of faces I haven't seen in quite a while. It's nice to see you guys from the Irish poetry group. The first poem I would like to read was inspired. I was inspired to submit it to Poetry X Hunger by Hiram, but I think it speaks to so much hunger all over the world and all over the country. This is called For the Students for 60,000 on Their First Trip to Nicaragua, for Pete White and all those students. They got off the plane stuffed with good intentions, ready to change lives, make bricks, build houses, teach lessons, feed the hungry. The trash from the last of their snacks disposed of responsibly. Next stop was after the bumpy, unpredictable ride. The expectations of primitive conditions, unfamiliar places to relieve their bodies, rest their heads, unfamiliar cooks, bellies used to plenty, met by very excited children. One weary traveler remembered that there was one more snack in her bag. She pulled out 2 oranges. The ones that she had been saving for herself. Such a sad offering for the small group. Before she could make a decision, one spirited boy grabbed one. She watched open-mouthed as he painstakingly peeled back the covering, carefully dividing this juicy treasure among 10. She wasn't hungry after that. And this one, I don't usually tell you anything about poems, but when we visit my in-laws in Rochester, New York, we often attend church with them. And there's this one man who sits always just under the light. I don't know if he plans it or what, but he is having a whole different experience than the rest of us. And this is written for Michael at St. Mary's Church. It's called Rhapsody. Enjoying the voice of creation under the Tiffany rose window, an old friend, ever gracious, ever new. Your name shared with the most important angel. What can you see? Face upturned toward heaven, stimming joy, paused with upturned palm, countenance lighted up, reflecting glory, bathing in revelation and celestial rays, palms perfectly poised, open. Are you sharing with the seraphim? Having a chuckle with the cherubim? Reflecting glory, smiling in the spirit, lifting love from your kneeling place, reflecting glory. Lingering with love as you take communion, soaking it all up, eyes turned toward heaven, always reflecting glory.
Mm-hmm.
Hiram, you're always inspirational. And you made me think about Langton Green and what happens in Northport in a whole different way. We have two gentlemen that come faithfully, more faithfully than, as faithfully as the weather, even sometimes even more, being good. They come every month. One is in a motorized wheelchair, and the other is fully operational in terms of being able to get himself mobility-wise. They are both somewhat challenged, and they both come every single month. And one of them doesn't write his own poems. He reads somebody else's, and he often needs help. And the other one writes his own poems, and he sometimes needs help. And they bring so much to the reading every single month. And so in addition to the many children that I've taught over the years, in addition to the adults that I am now teaching who tend to be seniors, and they're so much fun and discovering their gifts. It is such a privilege to realize I didn't even see them in another way until Langton Green. And I just want to affirm the work that you're doing and thank you for what you're doing and believing in people. Poetry has the power to take a reluctant reader and make them a writer. Poetry has the power to change hearts, and it always makes me cry, which, if you don't know me, this is what I do, especially if I feel it. So I'm just happy to be a part of this and always happy to share my heart in poetry.
Well, we're honored to have you here, Linda. Your heart is filling the whole Zoom screen here on my side. I don't know about anyone else's, but really appreciate you being here. You demonstrate, like so many of the other poets have today, that poetry can not only draw in the ears and the senses, but also that all-powerful heart. And that's so, so important. And that's one reason why I think it's such an incredible tool for initiatives like Langton Green. So really appreciate you being here and representing the state of New York in the circle. That's really wonderful. Really appreciate that. I think we'll turn it over now to John and to Diana to introduce our next reader. We're coming kind of into the home stretch, but hang in there because the next two readers are wonderful. You'll want to hear them.
So I have the pleasure of introducing Susan Moser. She grew up on Long Island, New York, the daughter of a historian and a New York hospital-trained nurse. She has been an editor, a firefighter, a video game raider, and a teacher. Her lifelong love of writing led her to pen her debut novel Of Better Blood, published in 2016, which received critical acclaim. Susan has been a writing instructor at Anne Arundel Community College for more than 14 years. And in 2022, she was the recipient of the Literary Arts Awards from the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County. Without further ado, Susan Moser.
And Susan, you're muted.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Hiram, for another wonderful gathering. Really appreciate being here. I have 3 poems, and I'm putting them on my screen, so I won't be looking down. The first one is over 60 years old, and I'm reading it because it has a farm and also a social issue. So I thought it seemed appropriate, and it was actually edited by Robert Bly, who was one of the poets I most admired for poetry, anti-war poetry. And he was a friend of a friend, and he gave this an edit. This is called Sunlight, the Farm, These Precious Days. Sunlight, the farm, these precious days. root and rock shadow in the long fields, every stone a witness, daisies and heifers in late morning. Cars come out of the city, covered with the smell of every death there is. East of here, bombers kill everything that move. Yet here in a summer of plenty, in a pasture of horses, my father balances water in old pails. And the next one I call Reading War Poetry on the DC Metro. I turned down an invitation to give $1 to a guy just out of rehab. I eat forbidden fruit, a mint on Metro. I read war poems, thirst and bullets, boredom and sand. My brother, who was once in rehab, breaks into my reading from beyond the grave. Would it have killed you to give that guy $1? And I've written a lot about my brother since his death in 2001. And I wanted to read a poem that's called The Wolves of December. It's for my mother and brother who both died in the same week of December, 50 years apart. Under a cold sky in the last week of the year, come the wolves of December, long, lean, hump-shouldered, hungry. They scent sorrow, red blood on snow. I scatter words to call them closer, pull words out of my pockets, hold them on my open palm. I look into yellow wolf eyes, feel warm, wet wolf breath, hear their hearts singing, and know they hear mine. Come, memory, we'll feed each other.
The power of those final killer lines, Susan. You're an expert at that.
Thank you.
Did you want to say anything about your vast experience in working with a variety of adult, seniors?
Definitely.
Yes,
I was very when Bernardo said not everyone is fully seen, I thought about my senior citizen, myself and my senior citizen students. It's been 14 years. I just want to make that clear because Colette taught special ed for 41 years. Mine is 14 years at Anne Arundel Community College, starting out at senior centers around the county, and lately, since 2020, on Zoom mostly. We're back to 2 in-person classes. But there's something about opening the door of writing to people who may have had it shut in their face by a teacher who put down something they wrote in 5th grade or 7th grade or 12th grade, and they never wrote for pleasure again. They come to class a lot of times to just record information for the next generation. But poetry has been a part of both autobiographical writing and the creative writing class. And there have been people who have just absolutely transformed. And one was a guy who had been a technical writer his whole career, his professional career, was communicating technical information to people, not the general public, but other professionals. And he discovered the power of a 5-line poem template, which I introduced to him. And I think he wrote over 100 poems about birds, starting with his bird feeder and then going on the internet to find birds. And at his there was a memorial gathering at his house after he died, and his wife had all of his poems and other writing he did in class spread out on the dining room table. So there were people, and people had no idea that he'd even done this, and they were picking up poems and walking around and sharing them with each other. I was just happy for him. My message to poets and prose writers in my classes: this is something you can go on getting better at till you're over 100. You can't say that about your tennis game. You can say it about writing. And it's been an honor and a privilege to create writing communities where people feel safe and welcome and able to reach inside and find, especially poignant, the people who love to write until a chance word by a teacher closed that door. It's been an honor to open it.
We thank you for, yes, reopening those important doors, Susan, countless numbers of them. I know of several colleagues, many of whom are here as your groupies, as your fans today, who have taken classes with you, and they will all attest to the wonderful job you do. And as was mentioned by Diana in the introduction, you were recognized for that talent by the county here about a year or so ago, a literary award, well deserved. Really appreciate you being here with us today and bringing those. I loved the 3 poems.
Thank you.
Each one of them. I'd like to see, sometimes my ears hear, but my eyes would also like to read them. And those are all the poems here presented today. I'd like to read again. I'd especially like to hear and read some of your poems as well. So thanks very much.
Hiram, can I just acknowledge that the 2 people who nominated me for the award are in the audience right now.
Well, there we go.
I want to
thank you both
thank you so much, Marilyn and Barb.
There we go. That's great. Very good. Well, I think as we come into the home stretch here, we have a very special closing poet and poem or two to share with you. I think John's going to do the proudful introductions of our last poet.
Thank you again very much. I really can't even express how much we appreciate everyone's time today and all your kind and thoughtful words. Our final presenter is going to be Ms. Diana Davis, Langton Green's Director of Day Services. Diana and I have worked together in a number of different capacities over the past 15 years. She is magnificent in addition to her regular day-to-day activities. She's also a certified yoga instructor and is certified as a livestock-assisted therapy instructor as well. So she keeps all of our consumers and part of our livestock population working hard all the time.
Thank you, John, my friend. So I am going to give a disclaimer in the beginning of this that it's very difficult to follow all of you wonderful people. And then also a disclaimer because my boss is sitting here that this was written with a little anger because I am advocate for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And my specialty is advocating for individuals with autism. So this poem that I'm going to close us all out with is called Oxymorons and Alliterations in the IDD Community. Oxymorons and alliterations in the IDD community. You cannot say the word disability without the pronunciation of the word ability. Common synonyms for the noun ability are aptness, adeptness, and aptitude. The prefix dis before any noun, verb, or adverb means not, or to constitute the opposite or lack thereof. So if one is described as not kind, not sincere, or not likable, then by all definition of the words, they too have a disability. In fact, the word disability in itself is an oxymoron. If we rely solely on the prefix of the word dis and disability, It is plausible to reach the conclusion that the individual to whom this word is being used to describe does not have an ability or has the opposite of an ability. The word ability is a noun. The Oxford Language Dictionary defines commonly as the possession of the means or skill to do something. Spoiler alert, no human possesses the aptitude to do all things, but everyone can do something. Let me insert the old adage here: a jack of all trades is a master of none. I've digressed, but let's focus one last time on the notion or possibility that the word disability, in fact, is an oxymoron. My final emphasis on this sentence being the word moron. A colloquial phrase or word of advice from the elders is don't be a moron. A moron is defined by Merriam-Webster as a person of low intelligence. As we dwell more on this definition of the word, often individuals with IDD are stereotyped as having low intelligence. Lowness, or the quality of being low, is often a perception of position and posture. When you are at the top of the mountain, the valley seems low. How many of us can attest to always feeling that we are at the peak or point of the mountains we face? This being true, sometimes we are all low and could be referred to as low intelligent or low vibrational. My benediction is this: you can choose to see each individual you counted as disabled or able. Yes, you heard me correctly. At Langton Green, we support the individuals entrusted in our care as opposed to serving them. We choose the word support in the terms of offering assistance. This assistance is offered when or if it is needed, but always with permission. This is in direct contrast to the use of the word serve, which implies the performance of a duty of service in exchange for a monetary or tangible reward. Let's use the common restaurant example. A waiter serves you food and beverages as an occupation. He or she is given an hourly wage plus tip. If we stick with this example, do you think a waiter would perform this service without compensation? At Langton Green, for over 3 decades, we have supported the IDD community. Soon, it'll be 4 decades. We have seen countless examples of how our direct support professionals go above and beyond the call of duty to simply support the individuals entrusted to us. A server has limitations to the services they are willing to provide. A supporter's role simply does not have these confinements or constraints. Moreover, it levels the playing field and erases a sense of social hierarchy. Let's stay here for a moment and really think of what the word serve implies. Typically, the recipient of a service is seen to be higher or of more regard as compared to the server. Again, this is one of the most common oxymorons in the IDD community, where if the word serve is used, the individual receiving care should be considered of higher stature or regard than the caretaker. However, when that individual is constantly labeled as disabled and or of low intelligence, amongst other negative connotations, the positions are almost always reversed. Here we have again another clear example of an oxymoron. Take a moment and let that really sizzle into your spirit and saturate your soul. As I close, I will call your attention to the title of my poem. It should be of no secret by now that I have this thing for alliterations. Indulge me for a bit more as I leave you with the definitive declaration that we aspire to at Langton Green. I pledge to be a companion, not just a caregiver. I promise to be a supporter as opposed to a servant. I avow to ask as opposed to assume, to be kind instead of condescending, to connect as well as communicate, to befriend instead of belittle, and to possess empathy instead of emptiness to all human beings. Lastly, I solemnly swear to deem and declare each dictionary publication or even scholastically or peer-reviewed article that so much as alludes to a disability as an inability, incapacity, incapability, incompetence, or ineptness as an abomination to all men and womankind. As the late Maya Angelou so prolifically proclaimed, we are all more alike than we are different. Thank you.
Diana Davis. Wow. I think we need to have that become the official handbook, that piece, the official handbook of Langton Green. That was amazing.
Thank you, friend.
Thank you. Well, my friends, hopefully in this, almost hour and a half, not quite, you've come to appreciate how poetry can, in fact, lift up its voice, lift up the poetry talent to serve and raise up the importance of these important social causes, such as the kind of disabilities. I now use that word very carefully. Try to use it very carefully, Diane. That are supported and are backstopped by the good folks at Langton Green and a number of other, I'm sure, similar facilities around the world. Langton Green is an important one. It's one of many such facilities, I'm sure. But the key point here is poets are rising to the cause, so to speak, and these poets today have really demonstrated their willingness to do it and their talent in so speaking up. So really appreciate everyone being here. If anyone has, I know Liz McLaughlin asked early on in the chat, if somebody wanted to donate to Langton Green, is there an easy way for them to do that? And I'm not sure, I haven't traveled or checked all the chat. I don't know if you posted the website there, but you might want to do that, John. And
yeah, Diana did post that in the chat.
Right,
we are a 501c3. We're not looking for money today, but it's certainly possible, and we appreciate that as well. Thank you.
And we appreciate Liz McLaughlin, Dr. McLaughlin, being here and raising that good question. But if there's anyone else who would like to come on mic and just say, or ask a question, say something, or ask a question, we've got a couple of more minutes here to do that.
Hiram, is there time for a very short poem? The writing teachers have reminded me of this.
Rena Fleming, there is always time for a very short poem from Rena Fleming, please. And you'll be the ultimate closing poem here for us today.
Okay. The host. Marie Elsa Bragg began altar with stone rolled from the throat of a cave. There are angels now rolling stones from throats. They are opening channels for poetry and prose to be voiced by generous inviting and the offering of their listening ears. And that's particularly with Hiram in mind today.
Thank you, Rena. I could listen to Rena. I could listen to the Irish poets forever, and especially Rena and Ryan, who've joined us here from Ireland today. Any other closing thoughts or questions? As I mentioned early on, this has been fully recorded. And so as soon as it's available, the recording is available, we'll try to get it out and to share it. And please feel free to share it onward with anyone who you think might be interested. Those who are in the area, if you haven't stopped by Langton Green, I shouldn't speak for Diana and John, but I have a feeling they'd be more than anxious to meet you and welcoming you to the facility. It's a great spot to visit and learn about all the good work that they're doing. And for those around the world and up in New York and over in Ireland, really appreciate you all being here to form the circle today. So I think if no one else has something burning to say, we'll give everyone back their afternoon or evening. And again, thank everyone for being here. And hey, happy end of the year holidays to everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for organizing it, Hiram.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
John and Diana, maybe we can stay on for just a minute, if that's okay.
Thanks, everybody. Lovely evening.
Thank you, Tony.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Rena. Very good. Well, I just wanted to double check with you all. I think I hope you all thought it went as well as I thought it went. I really enjoyed listening to all these folks. I'm trying to figure out why the light is so bright. It's really not bright over here. Anyway, really enjoyed that very, very much. And Diana, that was a wonderful piece. I didn't have a chance to say it, but you kind of bookended, I mean, with Dr. Ingram's first poem about the importance of carefully choosing words and your final piece where you brought that home again, that key point home again. I thought that was terrific.
Thank you.
So, and that was, as far as I was concerned, that was completely unplanned. So that's the wonder of serendipity here. But do you have any idea roughly when the recording might be available?
We're going to try and have it done by the end of next week. We're still talking to a number of editors and working through some of those processes to get them up on our Langton Learning website.
Trying to get our stuff up and running, our Langton Learning
Absolutely,
website.
yeah. So, but adding things to it has been a bit of an issue, but it will be a priority, and we'll keep you.
Well, I see it then as an end of the year holiday gift to everyone that we can share out to folks. Yeah. So that'd be great. That'd be great. And in terms of looking forward, I know we kind of want to take a deep breath and and give ourselves a chance to take a break on this. But it might be kind of fun in the future to think a little bit about. It's a little bit tricky doing things in person because obviously you can't have folks from overseas or New York or whatever. Yeah. But there are a lot of folks who are close by who might want to join something right there in your beautiful garden as well. So maybe we can think about that as well.
We're absolutely open to that. We have a couple of folks in the Annapolis area that are also engaged in writing and poetry. Okay. So we're kind of expanding that community a bit.
Okay.
I think after today we're going to implement a poet's discount for anyone that comes out, and will hit us with a couple of couplets. So
that'd be great.
We would definitely encourage anybody to come see us.
That'd be great. And you might even think about if some of the poets would be willing. I don't know if you'd have wall space there, but you might even think about, I know you've got some lovely artwork posted around. You might post a couple of poems up on the wall and frame them or something just for people to enjoy. And Diana, you let me know when that becomes a handbook, okay? When your piece becomes a handbook. Sure. I want to know about that. So.
We're working on getting Colette's haikus posted so that
seriously, that would be wonderful because she's got that beautiful connection with you folks too. So yeah. Well, very good. Well, I hope you have a good rest of your weekend. Good holiday, Miss Wyman. I'm glad you were able to join us as well, and thank you for being here. And I'm going to sign off. So we will see you all in the Zoomosphere and in the email sphere. Okay.
Happy holidays.